Welcome to Karm Yogi IAS. Welcome to one more quick revision session on Indian polity. I extend my warm greetings to all of you. And what I'm going to discuss is today's session is similar to the ones what I discussed previously as well. So this is one of the very important topics that appeared in the news last year, and you can expect a question from this topic or certain topics related to this. In this session, we are going to discuss about Joint Parliamentary Committee. As you all know, topics related to Indian Parliament as well as the functioning of the Parliament and subsidiary topics are very important. And generally what happens, UPSC keeps on asking questions related to them. So without any delay, we will start with today's topic of Joint Parliamentary Committee. So first and foremost, why this topic? So the context you all should understand what happened last year? You people must have come across news of stock manipulation and certain fraudulent practices by companies of Adani Group, owned by Mr. Gautam Adani. So what happened? The ruling party BJP was demanded by the opposition that there has to be a probe, either by a joint parliamentary committee headed by Supreme Court or monitored by Chief Justice of India. So what happened? They demanded that there has to be a JPC set up, Joint Parliamentary Committee, in order to find out whether the allegations of stock manipulation or the fraud which was alleged to have been committed by the group of companies is correct or not. Because due to this stock manipulation, the investors' money and all the finances put into the market were at stake. As a result, what happened? There was a lot of ups and downs in the stock market, leading to huge losses for the investors and all. And it also impacted our economy. So that is why there was a call for setting up a JPC. Okay. So when we talk about Joint Parliamentary Committee, you should first know what is it. So when we talk about JPC, Joint Parliamentary Committee, it is generally set up by the Parliament for a special purpose. What can be a special purpose? It can either be scrutiny of a particular subject or topic of public importance, or it can either be set up for scrutinizing a bill, analyzing a very important or crucial bill. Who sets it up? The Parliament sets it up. Okay, this is the first thing that you should keep in mind. It has members from both the houses and from both the ruling parties and the opposition. That means the Joint Parliamentary Committee is not an exclusive committee of any particular house. It includes members from both the ruling parties and the opposition and from both the houses, Rajya Sabha as well as Lok Sabha. Okay, so keep this in mind. Members of the Joint Parliamentary Committee are decided by the Parliament. That means the Parliament, depending upon the nature of the topic to be scrutinized, depending upon the nature of the bill to be scrutinized, and the requirement of the particular circumstance, will decide upon the members of the Joint Parliamentary Committee. Okay. There is no fixed number of members in the committee. So keep this in mind. Very important point. If any statement comes in the examination about number of members, it is not fixed. Okay. However, you must all have read about estimates committee, public accounts committee, where members are limited and fixed. But in cases of JPC, Joint Parliamentary Committee, members are not fixed. So this should be kept in mind. It is dissolved after its terms ends or task has been completed. So generally what happens, a joint parliamentary committee will be set up for a period of 6 months, 1 year, 2 years, and its term will end and then it will be dissolved. Means it is not a permanent committee, not permanent. Okay, so keep this in mind, all of you. Then next thing, recommendations made by the committee are recommendatory in nature and not binding on the government. Again, I am repeating this point. The recommendations are recommendatory in nature and not binding on the government. So if in examination, especially prelims, a question comes like the recommendations of JPC or Joint Parliamentary Committee are binding on the government or its suggestions are binding, then it will be incorrect statement. So the recommendations and advice given by the JPC is only advisory and not binding. What are the powers vested in the committee? So it can obtain evidence of experts, association, individuals, or parties suo motu. Suo motu means on its own discretion. okay, without being called for or on request made by them. So let's take an example. Suppose a JPC would have been set up to investigate about stock manipulation practices as was demanded by opposition. Then it could have called for evidences, documentary evidences, various records, and also called upon individuals and bodies to rectify in front of it whether the allegations were correct or not. So in this case, the Joint Parliamentary Committee can do it by itself also, or somebody who is an interested party can also request the Joint Parliamentary Committee to testify in front of it. Okay. If a witness fails to appear before GPC, his conduct constitutes a contempt of the House. That means if somebody has been summoned in front of Joint Parliamentary Committee to testify or give rectification of a claim, he or she has to present himself or herself. Okay. Ministers are not generally called by the committees to give evidence. So, not generally called means they are in general or in majority of cases exempted from being called. However, it is no barred that they cannot be called. There is no bar on ministers to be called. So if a statement comes that ministers are not bound to come in and testify to the committee, that will be wrong. That means ministers are also under the ambit of summon of the committee. With the permission of speaker, JPC can seek information on certain points from ministers and call the ministers also. Okay, so keep this in mind. The JPC can take oral and written evidence or call for documents in connection with a matter under its consideration. So, in cases of evidence collection, Joint Parliamentary Committee can also call for oral evidences. It can also call for written evidences and documents. Okay, this should be kept in mind. I have given certain examples of some of the previous committees that have been set up on certain scandals like Bofors, Harshad Mehta, Ketan Parekh, soft drink pesticide issue, 2G spectrum case, VVIP chopper, land acquisition, NRC, personal data protection bill. Okay. So this should be kept in mind. Sometimes a question might be asked like soft drink pesticide issue, 2G spectrum case, land acquisition case is common to which of the following? Joint Parliamentary Committee, Ad hoc Committee, Standing Committee, etc. etc. So these kind of things should be kept a note of. Now, one previous year's question which came from a committee only, it was in 2018, with reference to Parliament of India, which of the following parliamentary committee scrutinizes and reports to the House whether the powers to make regulation, rule, sub-rule, bylaw conferred by the Constitution or delegated by the Parliament are being properly exercised by the executive within the scope of such delegation? Okay. So answer is Committee on Subordinate Legislation. Subordinate legislation means sometimes what happens, the Parliament frames skeletal law or the broad gist of a law. Then the rules under the law, the regulations under the law, nitty-gritties and minute details are framed by respective department. So like Motor Vehicle Act is there. Okay. So Motor Vehicle Act was formulated by the Parliament in form of a bill. When it was passed, it became an act. However, the rules under the act were formulated by the Road Transport Ministry. Okay. So this is called subordinate legislative power. Okay, so in this particular session, we discussed about Joint Parliamentary Committee. It was a very small topic. So what was the context I told you? I told you about the details of Joint Parliamentary Committee. What is its composition, basic details about it. Then powers of the Joint Parliamentary Committee, what it can do, what it cannot do. I gave you certain examples and discussed one previous year's question based upon the committee that came in 2018. So try to go and read about parliamentary committees after this session. Take a half an hour time and read about parliamentary committees, different type of committees, their powers, their composition, so that you also get a gist of it. And any question coming from committee, you are able to solve it appropriately. Okay. So with this, I come to end of the session. All the best to all of you. We'll meet very soon with some very new and interesting topic. Till then, goodbye and take care.